In the meantime, the National Governors Association is holding its summer meeting starting today and tomorrow in Colorado Springs. The current chairman, Democratic Governor Jared Polis of Colorado, will be passing the gavel to Republican Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma, who will serve as the new chair of the NGA. Democratic Governor Wes Moore of Maryland will serve as the new vice chair. And the incoming chairman, Governor Stitt, joins us now, along with the incoming Vice Chair, Governor Moore. A bipartisan picture here this morning. Thank you both for being here this morning. And let's start with that notion, Governor Stitt. You know, in a Washington that right now seemingly be more polarized by the day, there are occasional and only occasional moments of common ground found within the Beltway. But it does seem like in the nation's state houses, a little more common. Talk to us about what you hope to do reaching across the aisle.
Well, thanks for having us on. And I think you're exactly right. Americans want us to work together in a bipartisan manner. And governors have a unique approach that we're literally just trying to have the best education system, the best economy, roads and bridges, healthcare system in our states. And Governor Moore and I agree on much more than we disagree as we're working to make our states the best places to live, to work, and to raise our families. And so we kind of laugh at Washington, D.C. I mean, they're just playing politics all the time, and the real work is done in the states. And so that's why we love the National Governors Association, sharing ideas, talking with each other, debating what are the best policies.
So, Governor Moore, let me ask you, though, the politics are injected in some of this. There are two governors, two of your Democratic colleagues, Governor Walz of Minnesota and Governor Kelly of Kansas, who are, per reporting by The Atlantic, are departing the organization. They feel like not doing enough to stand up to the Trump administration. Let's get your reaction to this from your colleagues.
Well, I have a deep respect for my colleagues in Minnesota and also Governor Kelly in Kansas. I mean, they are dear friends, both Governor Walz and Governor Kelly. And I also know that in this moment, the people of our states, the people in our country, they need us to focus on best practices and working together to make their lives better. You know, one thing, as Governor Stitt mentioned, you know, when I ran for governor of Maryland, I did not say, well, I plan on being the best Democratic governor or being the best governor for Democrats that Maryland has ever seen. I said, I plan on being the best governor that Maryland has ever seen. No matter where you call home, all 6.5 million people who call the state of Maryland home should rely and can rely on the fact that that is going to be my focus. It's the same thing in Oklahoma with Governor Stitt. And so we're thankful that we were, you know, selected by our peers to serve in these roles, because we believe that the best solutions for the people of our individual jurisdictions mean identifying best practices that are taking place all over the country and making sure that our states can be the laboratories for not just democracy, but the laboratories for best ideas and making people's lives better.
Hey, Governor Moore, it's Simone Sanders Townsend. You know, when I worked at the White House,
Simone.
It's good to see you. When I worked at the White House, the National Governors Association, it was the Republican governors and the Democratic governors that were coming to the White House appealing on behalf of the states, particularly as it related to COVID-19. The governors were all on the same page. Some other people were not. I'm wondering, given that this week the White House denied your over $15 million request for FEMA funds to repair after floods swept through Western Maryland in May, is there a conversation that you all are going to be having within the National Governors Association about support for states? Because these natural disasters, they don't care if your governor is a Democrat or a Republican. It's happened in Maryland. It's happened in Florida. It's happened in Alabama. It will continue to happen all over this country.
Absolutely, Simone. And in fact, yesterday, we had a meeting with the Council of Governors where I brought up this exact fact, that the denial that we just saw from the President of the United States for the federal disaster relief funds that I personally requested for the people of Western Maryland was denied. That is unprecedented. It has never happened before that you had a jurisdiction that not just met, but exceeded the criteria for federal support in a time of a disaster. And we were told, literally without an explanation, just simply with the words, this is not warranted. Well, I want to say to the people of Western Maryland that you are warranted, that you are supported. In fact, I'll be heading straight from here, going back to Western Maryland to go talk to our folks out there, because we were some of the first boots on ground to make sure that they have the supports that they needed. And so, especially when you're talking about disaster relief, you know, there is not a partisan push There is not a partisan lens in the way that we are supporting people in their greatest times of need. And especially when you're talking about the flooding we saw in Western Maryland, frankly, that is a jurisdiction that voted for Donald Trump. And so it's important that we put the politics to the side, especially when we're talking about emergency relief, and get people the supports that they need, particularly when they need it.
Governor Stitt, for people who are just learning that there is, in fact, an association like this, that you governors all hang out, it turns out. What's on the agenda, broadly speaking? How do you explain what reigniting the American dream can mean in a bipartisan fashion? What are you focusing on beyond disaster relief, which is so important?
Yeah, well, this organization's been around since the early 1900s, I think 1908, and it's just a great time we can get together, share ideas, and every chairman will have an initiative. And my initiative this year is reigniting the American dream. And what does the American dream mean? Is it dead? Can we make sure that these young people know that through hard work and education and free markets and entrepreneurship, they can chase and become anything that they set their mind to, regardless of your upbringing or who your parents were? The idea that in America you can accomplish anything and you're only limited by your imagination. And so that's what we're going to teach. That's what we're going to talk about. And you know, when everybody says we can't agree on anything in the left and right, but we can agree on this. That we want a better life for our children. We want a better education. We want better opportunities. And so that's what we're going to be talking about is what does the American dream mean? Governor Moore has a great American dream story. I've lived the American dream. We're going to be telling these stories over the next year that also coincides with America's 250th anniversary. And it'll all culminate next summer in our National Governors Association meeting in Oklahoma City. So we're really excited, and we think we can all agree on that American dream, and let's reignite that for another 250 years.
So, Governor Stitt, staying with you, obviously, a lot of this summer and the political landscape is being dealt with sort of the aftershocks of these one big, beautiful bill passed by your Republican colleagues in Washington a few weeks back. What are you hearing from your constituents in terms of particularly some of the cuts that might be coming to Medicaid? Your state obviously does have rural areas, rural hospitals that could be impacted by this. Some Republican senators, including Josh Hawley of Missouri, has already expressed some misgivings about elements. What are you hearing from citizens of your state?
Yeah, you know, we're working with our health care department, and every state manages Medicaid, which is the health care coverage of the aged, blind, disabled, pregnant women, the children, and so there'll be a long tail on it. Our team is telling us it will be, you know, phased in over the next 10 years. But yeah, we're obviously, we want to make sure that the most vulnerable are taken care of, and but at the same time, we have to talk about spending. And I know Congress has a really tough job. Right now, there's a $2 trillion deficit spending, meaning we're spending $2 trillion over our income. Congress has a tough job deciding where all those dollars are spent. But we cannot continue, in my opinion, continuing to spend $2 to $3 trillion over our income. That's unsustainable for the long term. And so again, these are tough conversations, and Congress has a tough job. But states will figure it out. We will absolutely get it figured out. We'll make sure that we are taking care of the most vulnerable, and we're using our resources wisely. And every state is different. And Governor Moore talked about it. There's 50 different what we call laboratories of democracy. The ideas come from the states. I believe if you give the states more flexibility, we're going to be able to make sure that dollars are on target to the most vulnerable, and we're going to figure it out.
Governor Moore, same question to you, the impact of the legislation, particularly on Medicaid and health care.
Yeah, I think the thing that we're seeing in the state of Maryland is that these impacts are going to be devastating. They're going to be devastating, particularly to rural health care, where we are about to have about $250 million that's going to be cut from rural health care across the state of Maryland at a time when our administration made a very deliberate, intentional decision to invest in rural health care because they have been left behind for so long. And there is no state, whether a Democrat or Republican state, that has the resources to be able to make up for when the federal government just decides that they are going to change the formula and completely altering the balance sheet. And actually, I completely agree with Governor Stitt on the challenge of spending. And in fact, one of the biggest challenges that I personally have with the big beautiful bill is it actually adds trillions of dollars to the national deficit at a time when we should be taking the national deficit seriously. In our first 3 years as governor, we have actually had 3 straight budgets where we actually decreased the size of the general fund, i.e. decreasing the size of state government, saying we can be more efficient, we can be more effective, and that doesn't mean we have to spend more. That we've got to be really careful and cautious when it comes to utilization of taxpayer dollars. And so I really hope that Washington, D.C. pays attention, because as governors, we have to balance a budget every year. There are no Oklahoma dollars. There is no Maryland dollar that we can just pump out additional dollars. We've got to balance our budget. And I really wish that Washington would actually pay attention to the leadership that governors are showing in our individual states.
Governors hanging out in a bipartisan fashion. The incoming chairman of the National Governors Association, Republican Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma, and the group's incoming vice chair, Democratic Governor Wes Moore of Maryland, our thanks to you both.